Coming up, it's an early wake-up call for a suspected drug dealer in Derby.
Police want to put a stop to drug supply in the area and also take away any assets and cash that have been made illegally.
Breast, cocaine.
And we hear what happened when the RNLI were called out to assist a yacht in distress that ended up alerting Border Force after it refused to be rescued.
I just said to my crew member, Alex, I just said, you know, just keep an eye, just make sure nothing's going on, they're not throwing stuff over the side or, you know.
This is the sailing yacht, the Sander.
Later on, we'll see what the boat fetches at auction.
Twice, third and last.
And back on the water, we find out where some cash and ill-gotten gains seized from criminals has ended up.
It just really did seem like no one was really there for me, but then as soon as I come on the barge, everyone was.
Across Britain every day, police are using a powerful law called the Proceeds of Crime Act to take cash and assets from people who are profiting from illegal activity like drug dealing and fraud.
In 2016, over £200 million in cash and assets were seized from criminals across the UK.
We follow police forces as they put their powers into use, arresting criminals and seizing their ill-gotten gains.
And most of what they seize ends up here, where millions of pounds worth of luxury goods get sold.
This is a proceeds of crime sale, and it's the largest of its kind in the UK. We follow stories of the incredible crimes behind each item here, and then watch as criminals' ill-gotten gains are sold to the highest bidder. And the money raised is put into the public purse.
Serious organised crime gangs work as a hierarchy, with drug lords at the top of the pile, operating through a smaller network of dealers. It's the police's job to disrupt these dealers, seize the drugs, and stop illegal cash from funding further crime.
Today, officers in Derby are coordinating a raid on an address in a nearby village.
Got no other intel that anyone else lives there. I'm not saying there aren't, but we're not aware of anyone else living there. There's no intel about any children or any pets living at that address. Shall we?
It's a property they believe to be involved in the supply of drugs to the local area.
Minimal history of drugs related offences. You can see he's just got one for possession of Class B cannabis.
The team plan to enter the property fast to avoid giving their suspect time to make a run for it, potentially disposing of any evidence. Police Constable Chris Barker is part of a team of officers that have been monitoring the suspect's address and movements over a number of weeks.
The intelligence for this address that we're going to is that the occupants are involved in the supply of heroin and crack cocaine and cannabis within the local community. This is the best bit for us. Doing warrants is our bread and butter, and sort of the unknown of what you are going to find. I mean, they take a lot of planning, and it's the execution part that's the exciting bit for us.
But it's not just drugs they are on the lookout for today. Cash can provide just as much evidence that unlawful activity is taking place.
I mean, there's different kinds of drug dealers. You have drug dealers who will deal drugs to fund their own habits, but majority of the time, yeah, they do deal drugs for financial gain. So, you know, we do go to some warrants and you find thousands and thousands of pounds and clear signs of wealth. What I mean by that is, you know, large tellies, sound systems, expensive clothing, watches, and other things that cost a lot of money. If we do find drugs and then find signs of wealth and cash, we will be seizing it.
As the officers arrive, a team work on getting through the front door, while Chris runs to the back of the property to prevent the suspect from making an escape.
Cover that window, I'll get the bag. Yeah, we're good, got containment. Guys, if you just want to come and stand on this corner, and we'll go in the address. So yeah, we've enforced at this stage. Just going to go and offer some assistance in there. Yeah.
And immediately officers can potentially detect an indication of drugs.
Odour cannabis.
It's been an unpleasant wake-up call for this suspect,
We've got any pets or anything?
and he's not making it any easier for himself.
What's your full name?
Jamal?
Yes.
Do you know my name? Innit?
No, I don't know your name.
We'll find out. I mean, I'm not going to do your job for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Is there anything you don't understand you need clarifying?
I know everything, man. You need to explain nothing to me. You know what I mean?
But officers have detained him and are ready to make an arrest.
Listen up. It's 10:03. Okay, at this stage, you're under arrest for possession with intent to supply Class A drugs. Okay, so you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you're later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, okay? That arrest is necessary for a prompt and effective investigation. Do you understand all that?
I'm blessed for that.
Pardon?
I'm blessed for that.
Cool.
And straight away, the team spy what they'd been looking for.
It appears, from the first visual presence, that it is crack cocaine, obviously on some digital scales. At the minute, we're not gonna touch that. We'll leave that in situ. Obviously, we touch everything with gloves for forensics.
After calming down, the suspect is taken to a local police station where he will be interviewed.
How is he going to get my dog back?
But he seems more concerned about his dog than a jail sentence he might be facing.
I've searched it. He's offered some resistance when told that he was going to be strip searched. He's become very sort of aggressive, and he's had to be restrained in handcuffs, and also had to control his legs to prevent it from kicking out. I suspect that potentially there may be items of value in there. There's a safe that's he's just made an indication, basically saying Merry Christmas. Possibly money, possibly further drugs. So at this stage, he has been arrested for money laundering.
And with the address cleared, a search dog is first dispatched to look for drugs. And later on, we witness exactly what was found when the forensics team did a full search.
When it comes to securing Britain's borders against smuggling, authorities have a mammoth task on their hands. As an island nation, many criminals believe they can slip under the radar. But time and time again, authorities have proved them wrong. This is the Sander. It may look unsuspecting enough, but it was central to a shocking scheme uncovered by the RNLI and Border Force back in 2016. It all began in the quaint fishing village of Aldborough, where the day had begun as any other for RNLI crew member Carl Barber.
We had a 2-weekly exercise planned for that morning. Expecting a nice, easy morning. So we got the crew that were coming to see, and we went off to do training exercise.
But the training exercise was soon disrupted when an emergency call came through.
While we're in the middle of training, we got a call from the Coast Guard to say they had reports of a yacht struggling to get in the river mouth.
The crew were told a sailing boat was in distress nearby, so they immediately tore along the coast to offer some help.
When we got there, the yacht was just about in the river, so we hung about outside, and literally at the same time, the inshore boat had arrived on scene from in the river, and so we let them carry on with the task.
Although a familiar scene, sailing conditions that day were worrying, and the crew jumped into action, dispatching a smaller boat to reach them. Steve Osborne was one of the crew on board as this drama unfolded.
They tried to get into the river at low, or sort of fairly low water, and there is a bar that builds up, and if you don't know it very well, then you're gonna catch the bottom. And they were stuck. They were sort of high and dry.
With time of the essence, Steve pulled up alongside and made contact with the crew on board.
Asked how many people on board, was told 2. I asked where they were from, where they were going to, and they said that they were from the Ukraine and that they were heading into the town and get food and sleep. So I relayed this to the Coast Guards.
The skipper of the boat, Hernadii Kurtoglu, had travelled over from the Ukraine. He said his vessel had blown off course while travelling to Spain. Steve's team offered to help them back to safety, but unbelievably, Kurtoglu declined. So why exactly was he so keen to be left undisturbed?
Originally they said no, they didn't want help, point blank refused.
Steve was persistent, but time was running out.
In the end, they agreed to a tow, which there was two of us on board. We rigged the tow up and then we towed them upriver.
Whilst towing the boat to safety, Steve's suspicions were raised when hearing Border Force would be lying in wait on their return to shore.
They'd explained to me that Border Force were going to be at the quay waiting for me. So at that point, alarm bells are ringing for me. I know there's something going on. I don't know what at this point.
Watching from afar, Border Force had heard enough, and the real cargo of this vessel was about to be discovered.
You just never know. So I just said to my crew member, Alex, I just said, you know, just keep an eye, just make sure nothing's going on. They're not throwing stuff over the side or, you know.
As the boat was pulled into safety, Border Force took over, sending a search team out to board the vessel. And it suddenly became very apparent as to why this crew had been so evasive. When looking below deck, officers discovered hidden inside were 5 illegal immigrants.
That surprised me. I was more surprised I hadn't seen them through the windows, to be fair, but gobsmacked when we found there were 7 on board.
The stowaways had travelled thousands of miles in cramped conditions. They were lucky to have made it, but the inexperience of the skipper meant their journey ended early.
Part of it was the fact that they must have been absolutely wiped out because none of them tried to run or, do you know what I mean? So it must have been fairly bad.
Steve may have been shocked, but Border Force weren't. Suddenly, things had escalated to an international scale. David Fairclough is the assistant director of the Border Force team there that were drafted in to take charge.
Organised crime gangs are always looking for innovative ways to enter the UK. Often the thought of trying to come through a secure border, an airport or a port, where the controls are extremely robust, isn't attractive. So they will seek alternative options, and potentially coming in through a remote coastal part of the UK may seem a better opportunity. Unbeknown to them, we have a very vigilant, secure border control system in operation outside the main ports and airports.
These organised criminals may have thought the sleepy Suffolk coast would offer them the perfect cover to slip into the country unnoticed.
I think whichever type of method an organised crime group choose to try and bring illegal migrants into the UK, the fact is you will be caught, you will be arrested, you will be prosecuted, you will be convicted, and you will be sent to prison.
Ukrainian national Hernadii Kurtoglu pled guilty in assisting the unlawful entry into the UK and was given a 4-year jail sentence. Authorities also demanded the forfeiture of the boat.
In terms of taking the assets off organised crime groups, just prosecuting and sending the organised crime group members to prison in isolation is not sufficient. We need to get to the heart of the organised crime group by seizing their assets. This could be expensive items such as paintings, cars, yachts, houses. We actually start to break down the fundamental finance behind the organised crime group and prevent them from starting up new operations.
This operation is one of the many putting a stop to human trafficking, but for those volunteers at sea, it was all in a day's work.
Well chuffed. That's just one of them. It's one of them shouts that does keep getting spoken about. They keep talking about it and jokes about me being done for aiding and abetting because I was the one who towed them up the river and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's all good.
And later on, we'll see how much money is paid back when the sander goes under the hammer.
Earlier on, we saw a suspected drug dealer being arrested during an early morning raid. It's part of an operation to disrupt dealing in the area so that they can search and seize drugs and any illegal money made.
Quantity of brown powder located in the bottom of these drawers, which we suspect at this stage is heroin.
Yeah, it's a substantial amount. Certainly an amount that we would see a dealer in possession of, rather than somebody that's in possession of heroin for their own personal use.
Whilst the suspect is being questioned at the police station, it looks as though the property is littered with drugs.
I've just opened up a second drawer, and straight away what's clearly visible is a bag, white plastic carrier bag, and it's full of a green substance which, to me, it appears to be synthetic cannabinoid, or what is known as Mamba. Quite a substantial amount, certainly a dealer amount. So there's just under half an ounce of heroin in drawer one, and on the scale, as you can see, in the bag, it's 13.68 grams, so there's just under half an ounce of crack cocaine on the scales ready to go. They're normally dealt in 0.1 gram deals, so you'll be looking at around about £1,400 worth of heroin and crack.
Back in the suspect's bedroom, the safe they've found is being emptied.
And lots of tablets, which at this stage we don't know what they are. There are quantities of cannabis that are wrapped in cling film, and also a large amount, it appears to be compressed cocaine. The tablets and the Class A drugs will be sent off for analysis, and that will come back with the weight and the purity, and it will tell us from a forensic scientific report exactly what they are.
Everything points to someone being involved in the sale of a substantial amount of drugs. They even find a possible list of debts owed to a dealer.
Yeah, your dealer list, basically. It looks like people who own stuff, list names with figures next to them. Looks like it's dealing in decent, if this is a decent way, it's because of the values you're talking about. Oh, I've even got the purple pen that he wrote it with. So, yeah, it's looking good.
And weapons suggest violence could be used against those who don't pay up.
So this is a police baton, and also a lock knife. This was just located in the hallway. It's sort of a homemade kosh that's been made, appears out of a weights bar. Obviously with a string, so you can hold it and use it as a weapon.
From what I know, that's a shotgun cartridge, and that's a bullet of some sort, but I don't know what your rationale behind having any of that, would you?
Small little room here.
And on top of all that, someone's been trying their hand at growing their own.
There appears to be one plant. This is just a single plant that's been cultivated. One plant, we estimate, can produce between 1 ounce and 3 ounces of cannabis per plant. Okay, so what we're going to do is obviously seize that one plant and take away all the equipment, the lighting, etc., to prevent any further growth.
The signs of wealth the team were looking for are not present in this flat. However, their search for cash doesn't end here. The suspect has left bank statements showing large cash deposits.
Looking at the bank statements, there's been, certainly in August, 2 certainly sizable deposits into his account. So we'll take the bank account numbers, and hopefully the financial team, should they need to, will be able to look into his financial dealings as well.
We'll have a look in his bank accounts as well, to see if his outgoings kind of match up with his incomings with regard to what he's obtaining from benefits.
Financial evidence is bagged up to be inspected back at the station, along with phones to be examined for intelligence.
From here, we'll take them back and we'll get an inspector's authorisation to download the phones and the contents to see if they've got any drug data on them. Try and establish associates and what level of dealing they're dealing. It might give us, if there are any texts or drug data, it might give us the weights, which depicts what kind of level dealer, whether a street dealer, wholesale dealer, and it'll depict what kind of chain pecking order they're in.
The investigation really starts now for the officers as they work on following the trail backwards to find the organised crime group pulling the strings with dealers.
It's a really successful warrant. Obviously, we didn't know what we were going to get when we went inside the address, but we've managed to recover quite a lot of drugs, Class B and Class A. I'd probably say approximately the drugs that we seized from this address alone is around £5,500 worth. That's at street level. 2 ounces.
For Chris and his team, today's enforcement has not only resulted in an arrest, but they will in turn conduct a financial investigation to ensure the proceeds of this crime are seized.
It's very important for us to sort of send the message out that if you are going to deal drugs, we're not going to ignore it, and we are going to be attending your address and arresting you and looking at taking absolutely everything that you own.
Ill-gotten gains can come in many shapes and sizes, sometimes in the form of an expensive watch or even a fast car. But regardless of how it gets to the authorities, some of that illegal cash will find its way back into funding local community projects for those in most need of a helping hand. This vessel is a 79-ton sailing barge called the Reminder. It's now being used by the charity Sea Change, and they're getting some help from the proceeds of crime.
It's a working boat. It would have carried 150 tonnes of cargo and a crew of 2 or 3. Well, now, of course, we're sailing usually with far more people than that.
Today it's on the Thames estuary, ready to embark on a journey skippered by Richard. Sea Change was set up to help young people and vulnerable adults to learn and develop new skills. And what's special about this project is that it's all been funded by money seized using proceeds of crime powers.
I'm from Hackney and this is quite different to what goes on there.
During the 5-day trip, the charity's founders, Richard and Hilary, will be teaching basic sailing skills to the young adults on board.
We're not inventing work. The work that the ship requires is real, genuine work. People play a full part in life aboard. It might be cooking, cleaning the toilets, all the nasty jobs that not everyone wants to do, but at the same time, when they're on watches, they'll take turns in sailing the ship, learning navigation, learning how to tie knots, rowing the boat, sculling the boat, running the outboard.
These teenagers come from all kinds of backgrounds, but it doesn't matter. The ship offers a way to get away from it all.
When I first went, I wasn't having a good time with family, especially with parents and siblings. And school I was getting really stressed out with.
And the bonds forged on the boat can really help to overcome all kinds of issues.
I am someone who's suffered from mental health issues. When you suffer with certain illnesses like anxiety and stuff like that, it really brings a bit more confidence and character out of yourself, and I guess it makes you less scared of the world and that.
And a happy and productive bunch of shipmates shows progress to team leaders at Sea Change.
Although it is about the ship, it's also about the young person. You can't really understand somebody unless you've walked a mile in their shoes. So we're also trying to think about what's right for the young person in what we're doing as well.
For some, this opportunity has been a lifeline, and it's really working.
We've seen, over the years, we've seen quite a lot of success. Young people for whom their job prospects were pretty few and far between, sometimes possibly unemployable. But if you treat people with a bit of respect, and if you give them a real job to do, you will see very, very quickly how they can change and how they can understand that it's actually about them. It's not about blaming someone else. It's not about saying, oh, my mum and dad or my teacher or whatever, that their future is actually in their hands. And so we're just giving them a little bit of help to have that future.
Cash seized from criminals has given the charity some real momentum. Many of the teenagers here will come back again and again and continue to thrive.
If we're going to help them, we need the money. It may only take one trip for that young person to say, do you know what? I'd really, really like to do something like this. And we actually have a young man who's working as a third hand at the moment who did exactly that. Now, not everybody's going to work on a barge, but the idea is that you want to work at something, whatever that might be. Without that funding, we can't do that.
We're absolutely delighted to be able to benefit from the fund that has come from the proceeds of crime and to see the money being used to the benefit of young people who themselves very often can be at risk of that kind of unfortunate behaviour. And hopefully by doing this kind of thing with us, that's much less likely to happen.
Crime can often have devastating effects on a community, but by preventing teenagers from falling in with a bad crowd or making poor decisions, the money raised from proceeds of crime powers has done the opposite.
There's 12 of us here at the effect of 12 people's happiness because one person has done something wrong. I think that's a brilliant thing.
Everyone today leaves the ship feeling inspired and hopeful for the future.
I've still got to find something I'm comfortable working in and somewhere that I feel like I belong a bit. And coming out here, it's a big interest of mine, and I do actually feel like I could do this and belong here. So it's like, it's good for self-esteem, I guess. It's really good. The future does hold a lot more sailing for me, honestly, it really does. I hope to do it in the future a lot more. Maybe own my own barge one day, start my own charity. That would be lovely.
Cash-rich criminals have no qualms about splashing the cash on expensive assets. Taking shortcuts to a fancy lifestyle never pays, though. Once caught, the police can strip them of all the assets they've acquired along the way. Earlier on, we found out how this 28-foot sailing yacht, the Sander, was central to a people smuggling plot uncovered by Border Force. The former owner is now in prison, and thanks to the RNLI and Border Force, the boat can now be put up for auction and the money raised given back to the government.
This is the sailing yacht, the Sander, 3.2-ton Comet, 28-foot. Nice little boat. It's currently moored in Suffolk. There's been a few people out to see it. Here to be sold with no reserve. You have £5,000 anywhere for it, for the Sander. £3,000, 1,000 starting, but at £1,000, at 1,000 on the boat at £1,000. That's for nothing.
Despite a good turnout, bidding starts off slowly in the hall.
On the Sander at £1,000 and 2,000 online, but at £2,000. At 2,000 on any bids in the hall, it's all online at £2,000 for a 28-foot yacht. It's at £2,000 now, but in at £2,000. At £2,000 on lot number 11 and 3,000 now, but in at 3,000. Is there anyone waiting to bid in the hall? It's all online at £3,000.
But things start to pick up when online bids come through.
3,000. It's all online at £3,000, and at £3,000 for 3.5 now, but then at 3,500. At 3,000.